Larry, obviously you come off of two big wins over the last weekend. I mean, what's it like to have those as a momentum builder as you come into a game at Vivint Arena with Weber State coming up?
Well, no, it was a good week for us. I thought we got a lot of stuff done in light of the fact that it was really a mysterious week when it came to injuries. So we weren't able to get real quality practices in with all our troop, and I thought a lot of guys responded really well under the circumstances, and it was a heck of a college basketball game that we were fortunate. I mean, BYU made a lot of tough shots, big time plays, and I never would have guessed we would have scored 100 points in that game and turned it over 11 times. So there were some positive things that happened, I think, for both teams offensively, but I don't think we walked away from that game, feeling very good about our defenses. But and then there was a little bit of a hangover, I think, on Saturday with the afternoon game after the football game, and some different things setting up emotionally for a potential letdown. But I thought it wasn't a great first half against Central Arkansas. We gave up 53% from the field, and we're out rebounded. So there were a few things that were for cause for concern, and but to get 2 wins, and now we're heading into another in-state game with Weber, a good basketball team, and then a couple more against elite opponents before the new year. So we've got to get a lot better in a rebounding area, defensive transition area, and I think we're probably at the point of the season. This has been one of the messages to our team, where I don't think the defenses are going to be maybe as porous as they have been in the games that we've played. We've been able to score fairly early on a lot of possessions. So we're going to have to outlast some people, on offense. And certainly I think, from a defensive point of view, I think we're playing some teams with a lot of discipline and a lot of talent. So we're going to have to outlast people and be ready to guard late into a shot clock. So I think that's a pretty consistent theme with our guys, is let's make sure we're dialed in and ready to finish some possessions. And certainly the rebound is the exclamation point on that defensive possession that we need to focus on. Oh, I don't think that's for me to answer necessarily. The organizers, and I know Miller family and the Jazz folks have been taken initiative in that category. So I don't know how season tickets have gone. From our perspective, it's we play a lot of neutral site games, so we've got an additional neutral site game every year here in Utah. So we're just kind of playing who they tell us to play, and we'll let the organizers decide if this is something that continues to move forward.
You talked about injuries, and I know you don't like to maybe do specifics. Can you just tell us generally? I mean, you had some guys hobbling. How healthy your team is right now going into this game?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it. We're not at full strength. Ryland's dealing with some rib issues. Mickey's got a knee issue. But, maybe, I guess in the sense of a basketball team, we're almost in a bye week where you have a week between games, so that's the good news. It's been kind of a comedy of errors with, collisions and ankle sprains and stitches and knees and different things like that. So more so than any year I can remember here, certainly, where you have to really take a good look at how physical you even want to practice to be when you increase the probability of some of those mishaps, so, and that's problematic when you're talking about really trying to sharpen the saw when it comes to rebounding, because that's a physical part of the game, but it's also when you have 6 or 8 heads in the same, proximity, and you've got concussions and ankles and different things. So we're not at full speed, but hopefully by the time Saturday rolls around, we can get closer, and then, 2 quick games the following week, and then we'll have 4 or 5 days off for a Christmas break. So hopefully everybody can get their battery charged at that point prior to league play, and we can get back and maybe be closer to healthy.
You can't say if anybody's definitely missing this coming game.
No, I mean, shoot, we've got, 5 days before that game. So, I have no idea. I'm hopeful, but, the nature of both of these injuries that I'm talking about aren't, black and white, and it's going to be a little bit more based on how they feel closer to game time.
You're playing Weber this first time in 8 years. Before you came, they played him 35 straight years. Can you just say why you haven't been playing him, say, for the last 8 years?
No, I can't. We just haven't scheduled them. I don't know why it was done 35 straight years, but we can't play everybody in state every year, and I didn't want to play them because they kicked our butt the last time we played them. So, other than that,
just to prod you a little further on the injuries, have Rylan and Mickey, did they practice yesterday?
no, I'm not going to get into specifics. Yeah.
Larry, in the past, you've talked about kind of, especially non-conference schedule, wanting to structure it a little bit more, kind of like an NBA type thing. Not always, but have some games that kind of test these guys early before you get into conference play. Do you feel like having this week off, or maybe a little bit more sporadic, that helps, especially with the young team, or how do you feel about the scheduling this year in regards to that?
I'm pleased. Andy does a great job with scheduling. I mean, we're not going to play a lot of games. It's not sporadic. It's finals week. So, we've got other things that come into play. It's real normal when you look at the conference schedule or college basketball schedule right now. I think there were 4 games last night in the country, or 5 games. So, the finals week is a challenge for a lot of guys. Academically, everything's coming to a head, and it's important that we try to knock a lot of those. And I think the majority of our team will have them done by Wednesday. There's a few on Thursday and a few Friday, but then we can kind of shut the books for a few weeks. And, again, take a little bit of a break, a Christmas break, and then gear up for league play. But I've been pleased with it. I mean, it's never a perfect schedule, and you can't try to guess when you're injured and when you might need a little more time off. I would say this, I feel there's a little bit of good fortune in the fact that when we are beat up, that we're not in those weeks where we're playing 3 games in a week, because then it's more problematic. So the timing right now with having a week for finals, I think, is good. And scheduling is a really complicated issue. I don't think anybody even knows how complicated it is. And it's always seems like it's a perfect case scenario for other people to make suggestions or ask questions about why this and why that. But it's, and then next year we're going to go to a 20-game league schedule. So there's even 2 less preseason games. And it's nothing. Recruiting and scheduling are 2 of the most challenging parts, and also I think the lifeblood of a program. And a lot of times our schedule's done 2 years in advance, and things can change, in those 2 years' time. So even when you lay down a plan that you think is going to come to fruition, it ends up maybe not being a top 50 team that you're playing. So. Anyway, it's good. Andy works his butt off at it. It's a difficult part of the job, and I feel fortunate to have him making a lot of those decisions and getting us involved with things.
By the end of this non-conference schedule, you'll have played, I believe, 6 games on neutral floors. That includes high-profile stuff against Kentucky and San Diego State after that. For you, I mean, what is the benefit of playing on a neutral floor, especially when you get on a national TV high profile situation like you will against Kentucky and San Diego State?
Yeah, well, in regards to Kentucky, they're not playing you in Rupp. They're not going to play you in the Huntsman Center. They don't play anybody other than maybe Kansas and Duke and one of those things. So they don't put themselves at a high risk to lose a road game. That's an opportunity. A few years back, we played Duke at Madison Square Garden. There's these types of games which I think are a pretty good litmus test with where you are, and it's the nature of college basketball. Almost everybody's in an MTE event, and we had 1 road game and 2 neutrals this year, but that seems to be kind of the way of the the lay of the land, I think, in recruiting. A lot of people are playing the neutral site games. I think TV gets involved. I know with this San Diego State game, that's an opportunity to play in an NBA arena in an ESPN type of environment. So, yeah, it's common. We're trying to maintain some home and homes and keep the integrity so that we've always got a couple quality home games. But it's not easy when you're in the West. You know, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would be willing to bet that 20% of the Power 5 conferences are in the West. And so for a team to fly out to Utah, potentially play at elevation, it doesn't make as much sense to them as it would to find a team that geographically probably suits their travel a little bit better. So, you know, even conference, there's things kind of built-in problems for us as a conference with being somewhat isolated on the West Coast. So, anyway, it's a good test. Certainly at Vegas, we're going to have plenty of Kentucky fans. I'm not sure if we're going to know that it's a neutral site game. But that's, I think, what we all sign up for. We've talked about that as a coaching staff and players. You want to have an opportunity. I know you can't beat a Kentucky on a neutral site court if you don't play them. And those are some of the things that have proven pretty important to the NCAA tournament committee, and we'll see where we are.
Booth is obviously a talented athlete. He's still growing into this team, but it seems like there's times where he kind of gets a little ahead of himself, a little fast. I mean, is that what you're seeing from him, where maybe he's trying to do too much before he can kind of get into the offense, or what's kind of the situation with him and being able to do that?
No, I'm there's, like a lot of our players, like a lot of 19, 20-year-old kids, it's, we hold the bar pretty high and maybe expect some things, but it's a learning, it's a process. If you look all around this building, we talk about the process, and I think Booth has made some great strides. You see a level of competitiveness in him. Certainly the last couple weeks in practice. He was really good in practice yesterday. So I can think of a guy named DeLon Wright that was probably getting these same questions in the middle of his junior year, his first year in college. It's not easy. And when you have a little bit of a bullseye on your chest and you're one of the top guys on the team scouting report, you're going to have to be pretty good. And, we've got a bunch of freshmen and sophomores that are I think they're doing a fine job, but there's also a certain amount of data that's out on what you do. Like in our scouting report, we're going to find out, that a guy wants to go right 83% of the time and he can do this. So you try to take those things away. And so you got to have counter moves and you got to be ready. And at the end of the day, I think Booth is starting to realize that he's got to have an edge to him at all times on both ends of the floor. And, I've been pleased with the progress that he's made through this process. But I don't know if a person like yourself or anybody else expects something that they're not getting. It seems to be a popular question as to what's up with Booth. Well, he's a sophomore, and we're excited to have him, and he continues to work.
Larry, Ryland was a guy that, took a lot of big shots, had a lot of confidence at Olympus, and it seems like that has just transferred over as a true freshman at a completely different level. Did you think that he would be able to carry that level and that level of confidence over to Division I so quickly?
Well, that's a big challenge. Each time you make a step up. I mean, if you're going from, middle school to high school, it's like you kind of earn your stripes and you feel like you've arrived, and then you take that next step on the ladder. And I've always kind of described that ladder as there's really low, broad steps at the low part of the ladder, and then when you start getting up to the top of the ladder, it's kind of like one of those that goes really tall. Those steps are quite a distance in between, and there's not as much room to put your foot. And so, Ryland is a guy, I think, in the summer, early on, went through a lot of typical freshman, the blues with, wow, I used to be able to get away with that, and now it's not happening. And I've talked to a lot of our freshmen. Ryland was one of the guys that I talked to that, you can't be given confidence, really. It's got to be something that you make a decision in your mind. It's kind of like energy. We talk about energy not being an emotion you feel, but it's a choice that you make. And I think confidence is a little bit of the same way. You don't just all of a sudden feel confident. You've got to kind of talk yourself into. And I've suggested to Rylan that he flash back to high school and play with the same freedom and ease in his mind. And he's done a terrific job. You know, he's going to still see a lot of different pitches, and there's a lot of, you know, fellas coming down the pike that are going to be a challenge. But I'm not surprised at all. I've watched the kid play since we moved here as a little shaver, and you know, we were in a lot of games. My son's playing on his team in a lot of games, and won a lot of games that we probably had no right to be involved with. And Rylan was oftentimes one of the catalysts for those teams. So I'm really proud of what he's doing. He's a warrior. He's dealt with a bunch of ankle injuries. I don't think there's many guys in college basketball that would have played in a couple games this year that he wanted a piece of. And so he's tough as nails, and we keep our fingers crossed that we can get him healthy.
And then what's the biggest aspect that Timmy Allen has made the biggest jump from freshman to sophomore year?
Well, I think one of the big things is you know, his body, changing his body conditioning wise. I mean, we're saddling him up and riding him pretty hard right now. He couldn't do that a year ago with carrying the extra weight. I think he's been really dedicated and disciplined to a scouting report. He's one of the more mature guys on our team that understands the sense of urgency with the handouts and the visual and the film work that we do, and how important it is with these young kids. I think he holds them accountable, and he seems really dialed into it. And then I think leadership-wise has been off the charts. He's worked as hard as anybody in our practices. I don't know that he's missed a practice. You know, he wants to win, and he's found a good balance with helping bring some of the younger guys along, holding them accountable, but also trying to give them a sense of confidence in difficult situations. So real pleased. There's just a lot of areas. I think he's mature beyond his years, and has proven to be a heck of a leader.
Coach, what is it that you like most about this team after this chunk of games? Is there something that surprised you? What are you liking the most about your guys?
Well, I mean, you're only as good as your next game. We don't really break out the scrapbook and talk about this. The one thing about it, when we play, the three big words that are in our facility: play hard, play smart, and play together. And sometimes it's hard to find the formula to do that, but when we've done that, when we play really hard and we share the ball and do things collectively, we're pretty darn good. And in the instances that we don't, there's a correlation with us losing some games. You know, when guys think they need to take it upon themselves, or we don't quite have the edge that we need, it's pretty average. So I just like the fact that they understand that. I think we're growing in that way and maturing a little bit as a group. And the more experiences you have in those areas, I think the more it validates what we're talking about as coaches. So I really sense that the guys are kind of latching onto that concept.
With you know, statistics and everything out there, a lot more, especially in basketball for the general populace. You know, you talked about like the kid goes 83% to his right or whatever. With those types of things readily available to people, how has your coaching tenure changed in how you scout teams or how you look at teams, knowing that a lot of that stuff's probably a lot more accessible even for you?
Yeah, I think some coaches are really into it, you know, and I think I'm somewhat balanced with it. It's not the end all. A little bit like Jerry Sloan analogy. I played for Jerry for 1 year here, and it'd be great if everybody could say a little prayer for him too. By the way, because it's not great. But Jerry used to always, if you ask Jerry, hey, what are we doing pick and roll coverage, or what are we doing on this? He'd just say GYFG. There's a little sauce in there along the way. But it was never really about anything other than effort, kind of like the playground. And then, you know, I played for Del Harris for 5 years, where it was all schemes. Dell very rarely talked about effort. And so sometimes you could get bogged down in relying on a coverage, but if you don't bring a little bit of the Jerry Sloan mentality with you, you're going to be in trouble. So I think it's a blend with how we talk about playing the game. You don't want to overcook guys with numbers because there is a lot of GYFG. But when you start seeing action, repetitive plays, and different things where, you know, guys are trying to get to their favorite hand, it makes no sense to not try to take some of that stuff away. So, you know, pick and roll coverage, certainly, you know, top blocking guys, not letting guys get to where they want to go, I think is important. And so we've got a great staff. I mean, Dave Dunleavy upstairs is as good as anybody in the country at any level, breaking stuff down, and crunches a lot of numbers and has been real helpful. And our staff jumps into actions, and I think if you combine it all together, it gives us a pretty good chance to put together a scouting report that our guys can understand. Kurt, what's going on, buddy? Somebody muzzle you? Let's do it. My buddy Bobby Houck is in the neighborhood. No, that's pretty cool for both teams. And it's Friday night. I was thinking it was Saturday night. So Friday night at the fights up at Weber, and then Saturday afternoon, 2 o'clock. So a little doubleheader. Is it Friday the 13th? My son has a game. Olympus has a game at PG, I think, Friday night. So I know that the Warriors are in town playing the Jazz. So there's a few spooky things going on. Dana, stay out of trouble. Yeah. All right.